Welcome back. It's Roster the People Summer Edition. 32 teams in 32 days. And today we're going to go through the Jacksonville Jaguars. But real quick before that, Neil Smith, Mike Burland, back at you. As always, Mike, how's it going today?
Good. Just continuing our trip, like you said, around the AFC South. So on to Jacksonville.
Yeah. Real quick before we get into it, do you think people will be yelling a lot of Duval, or are they going to be sad? How do you think this team, where do you think they're going?
I think they're going to be in playoff contention, come down to the last week, and it's going to win or lose type of thing. I don't think they're going to be right there like 9-8, 10-7, 8-9 type of range.
Yeah, I'll bring it up because we mentioned the division, and it's like, man, this division got better.
Yeah,
like there's three decent teams in this division, and then there's the Titans, but there's for real three good teams that are all going to be trying to do something this year. So it's and Jacksonville is one of them, but it's going to be interesting to go through. I'm going to warn everybody. This is going to be a little different than some of the last shows that we've put out. I've noticed where we're talking about paying sticker price. Ain't none of that today. There ain't no sticker price in this world. I'm in heaven. I'm in a world of value. I'm looking forward to going through this. But real quick, today is August 2nd. So if anything we say sounds a little bit dated, that would be why. Check out the wrap-up show, tentatively scheduled for August 31st, the big wrap-up live stream where we'll update any takes that need to be updated. This is your 2024 draft primer. That's what this is for. We are using 12-team PPR, 16-round standard draft. That's the kind of most commonly played format at this point. The rankings and ADPs you'll hear come courtesy of Fantasy Pros. I'm part of their ECR. We're a Fantasy Pros affiliate, so my rankings kind of get slushed in with everything else. But we will refer to our own individual rankings as we go. We'll also mention notes for other formats should they become relevant as we take you around and break this whole thing down. Did I forget anything, Mike? Did I get it all?
I think you got it all.
I think I got all the PSAs. All right, well then let's go right for it. Trevor Lawrence. Such a frustrating experience last year for such a talented player. If anyone rostered Trevor Lawrence last year, I'm sorry. My bad. That wasn't a good recommendation. I follow my own advice, so I'm right there with you. It was not enjoyable, to say the least. That team had a lot of problems, and they put a lot on him, and it just didn't go great. So, Mike, I know you have a note about what does almost TDs mean? We didn't go through this. I don't know what this means.
Yeah, there was a clip running out there with it showed Trevor Lawrence and just all the basically touchdown passes he should have had, but they were dropped or
the drops were so brutal.
Yeah,
don't remind me about the drops.
Bounds. Yeah, and it was a crazy amount. I think I heard someone say it was like north of like 12 to 15.
They had the most drops in the NFL I don't know if they finished that way, but they for a good while they were comfortably leading the NFL in drop passes.
And I know every quarterback's going to have these almost touchdowns, but I think he had kind of a ridiculous amount, and his season could have looked, even if he got half of those, his season would have looked a lot different. So, I mean, you want me to get into my thoughts on him? You want to set it up?
Well, no, we'll do the open. We'll do the lead in, and then yes. So, as such, we mentioned the brutality. So, Trevor Lawrence is opening as the QB 16 at 103 overall. If you go back to last year, he was in a lot of people's top 10s. So to fall this far shows the level of frustration that I'm talking about. By the way, his ADP is 122. So the public is coming off almost 2 rounds on Trevor Lawrence. The public is voting with their wallet and saying, no, I am not living through this again. So with that as the table being set, Mike, what are your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence? I'm curious.
Yeah, I've never been the biggest Trevor Lawrence fan. I've been one of the biggest critics, and I thought it was funny like we just let's throw his rookie year out the window and completely, and it's like, oh, but we're not going to do that for other players because he's his nickname is literally the Prince Who Was Promised. He has the look and he's everything. So and I was not big on this leap. This everyone talking about Jacksonville as the next Kansas City type of thing, and going into last year and. I wasn't in on that, but now I think I'm in on Trevor Lawrence where he's going. We talk about it. We generally like to wait for our quarterbacks. This is the range of guys we like to grab. And you look at the players going around him, and it's guys you kind of know what to expect. Your Jared Goffs, your Kirk Cousins, your Tuas. Okay, they're going to be low end QB1s and give you good production. Trevor Lawrence to me has that upside of like, maybe if just things click and he can run the ball a little bit, like he
Maybe if
rushed
they
for
don't
over
have a
20.
historic number of drops through like 8
Yeah.
games, you know what I mean? Something like that. Something like
Yeah.
normal was to happen. That would be good.
100%. Yeah, and it just felt like they were forcing the ball to Ridley, and it just wasn't clicking for either one of those
Well, we'll
players.
get
And
into that. We'll get into
uh,
that. Let's just say you don't have to worry about that anymore.
yeah. So, like to me, in this range of guys, like I think he's probably going to give you a solid floor of a low end QB1, maybe just outside, but he has the upside to be like a top 7 guy, in my opinion. Which in this range, barring injuries, of course, you don't really see that with a lot of these guys. So, like I said, he rushed for over 21 yards a game last year. So that's, not nothing. That's half a touchdown if you play in 4-point passing
It's
touchdowns
not
every
nothing,
game.
but in the modern NFL, it's also not good.
No, but I think
So
we do overlook it slightly, because
yeah,
it
yeah.
gives you, I call them, my term for them is the pocket passer plus, right? So it's those guys
Okay,
where they're
I
going to
like
give
that.
you,
That's good. I like that.
yeah, they're going to give you the good numbers, hopefully with their arm. And then they're going to add that half a touchdown every game on the ground, which
Yeah,
you add it up at the end of the year. It's like, oh, that gets you from like QB 11, Jared Goff, to like QB 7, just that little extra 2 points per game. So, yeah, I'm totally in on taking him. I'm going to probably double tap with the quarterback position,
yes,
but
yes,
yeah,
yes.
really good value for a guy that I still think has a lot of potential.
I'm right there with you because this is you mentioned it. You laid it out nice and flat. It's folks in this range are usually who I'm trying to target, and I want
Mm-hmm.
two because we're going to see what works. And Lawrence, this is an extreme discount on what the ceiling is in such a way that the other players being drafted in his range do not possess that level of upside. But I want two of them. So you mentioned some of the pairings. Like I'm more than willing to take Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff, and we're just
Mm-hmm.
going to see what works and just double tap it right there, and then not waste time on a high end quarterback when I can get most of what I need out of those two guys. Like that's kind of what it is. I know it's frustrating having to pick week in week out. It can be a little annoying. So you want to be prepared for that going in. You're gonna have to make a couple decisions and make some manager moves. But to be honest with you, to me it's worth it when you really look at how your team looks. At the end of the day, I'd rather spend my early picks on running backs and wide receivers that I know I'm gonna need and figure out quarterback later. And it's just a lot easier to do that, especially in a world where people are overpaying, in my opinion, for quarterback. Just because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, you could hit the lottery, but you could also completely flame out. And I guess you could say that with every position, but it's like, yeah, but I could trade those running backs and wide receivers later because people got to start
Mm-hmm.
2 and 3 of them, not one. This is why Superflex does add a certain element to this game. You know what I mean? Where it's like now quarterback does come way up, way more valuable in Superflex. But Lawrence is exactly who I'm trying to target in that range. I want to make sure that I get a healthy backup. My only concern about Lawrence is still the fumbling.
Yeah.
It's maddening. He's never quite fixed the fumbling issue, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't deal with that with some of the other guys. But the upside is there because I think this in general is a team that people have overreacted to. You brought it up. They went from being the next Kansas City Chiefs to being the third place finisher in the AFC South
Yep.
on a lot of like in 1 year. It's like that team didn't get that much worse. Like it's like so they had some incredible bad luck and a lot of injuries, especially on positions that we don't talk about as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That so there you go.
And Lawrence himself was beat up too and playing
Yes.
through it. There
Yes.
was a couple games there like, oh, he's definitely missing, and nope, he played.
Yeah.
Like,
He's gonna play
um,
because the alternative is not acceptable.
yeah,
Uh, and now the alternative is still not acceptable because now it's Mac Jones.
yeah. I,
So
I'm not going to
not
talk
great.
about Mac Jones, but has there ever been a two quarterbacks drafted in the first round and in less than 4 years they're on the same team? I don't know if
That's a
that's
good
ever
question.
happened,
That's a good
but
question. I'd be interested to see that. I don't know offhand.
no,
I
I
don't
don't
know
know either.
offhand
I
like
doubt
that.
I doubt it's ever happened
It
because
probably
less,
hasn't.
yeah,
Pro
that's
Football
ridiculous.
Reference will know the answer to this. It's just a question of
Yeah,
going through and digging for it. Like
yeah,
that's a good question though. I hadn't thought about that. Uh, but yeah, wheels up on Trevor Lawrence. This is a huge discount, crazy discount on what it should be, especially given what last year was. So I mentioned a world of values. It's it's pretty incredible how quickly that happened. So whatever, I'll take the discount if everybody else wants to wants to pass because they're scared. I'm not scared of it. Other things I'm not scared of. Travis Etienne is back. He's going to be the RB for this team again. He opens as the RB9, translates to 21 overall. Public's taking him at 18 overall. So he's a second round pick. I have very little to say about this. I feel like that's correct.
Yeah, for this year, he does fall in that bucket of like those second rounders where they kind of feel like third rounders, but they're second rounders because everyone kind of feels like third rounders at that range. So,
that's this draft this year. The first round is pretty good. The second round is scary. The third round is also a little scary, and then in the fourth round, there's some weird values that I'm seeing, and I'm like, huh, weird it's tiering.
It's strange. He did have a kind of the tale of two seasons, weeks 1 through 8, RB4, weeks 10 through 18, where his snap share did fall by 15, 14%. He was RB22. Wasn't as efficient though, 3.8 yards per attempt. And, you compare that to his second year, but his first year playing in 2022 was 5.1. So like a huge drop off. So I imagine it's closer to somewhere in the middle. He's going to catch a bunch of passes. This offense should be better. He'll get touchdowns. He already had 12 last year. So, that was the big reason why he wasn't, he was RB22 over the second half was they had a tough run defense schedule and they just weren't scoring. That's when they really fell apart. They started off 5-1, 6-1.
Yeah. It was fine early season, but then eventually the mistakes and then the schedule got harder and people started getting hurt. Part of it too is Etienne was also nicked up through the back half of the year, so that also slowed him down a little bit. And also by that point, he was still playing, even though he was kind of gimpy every week. He was questionable a lot. The issue became, but by that point, who in the NFL isn't? I get that counter argument, but the other thing is, but other people, their whole team isn't hurt around them. Because it's and that's also part of it. So he had to still try to contribute at his normal level because it's we're all hurt. The whole team is hurt. And in their case, it was a little above average. So I'm not afraid of Etienne. It doesn't sound like you are either.
No, especially because you look at who's behind him. It's okay, take Bigsby and Dearness Johnson. Are we really worried those guys are going to do more than just give him a breather?
No. I like Dearness Johnson fine for what he is as a backup, but that's it. Tank Bigsby is, if that's what floats your boat, it's not my cup of tea, but go ahead. But I like Etienne. The main thing, as you said, is he's going to catch a lot of passes. Yeah. He has the cheat code, which is red zone work plus targets. That's always been the cheat code in PPR. If you get that, good things will happen. And I'm not afraid of having him as he's kind of he'd be your RB1 if you got a really good wide receiver. He might be your RB2. So, but that's just what it's going to be. It is the one thing that is not of value. I would argue that he is this is the closest thing on this team that gets to sticker price. There's not a lot of wiggle room here because I don't see too much upside for him being able to crack into let's say the top 5. You know what I mean? Something would have to there'd have to be some injuries or something would have to go really right that I'm not projecting. But I think this is fair. I think this is fair. I think this is what it should be if this is what you want. So I'd recommend it, but it's the one thing that's not a discount. All right, let's forget that. We agree on it. We're agreeing on everything. It's boring, but we agree on everything. I'm going to start manufacturing controversy. That's why Jason having Jason is here is nice because I don't have to try. He just does it. He brings it into my world. Wide receiver Christian Kirk. So this is one that I cannot believe is the world we live in. Christian Kirk is the opens as the wide receiver 30 at 57 overall, and the public is like, nah, dog. We got him at 72 by ADP. Nah. Why? Can you help me? I need help. Can you help?
Only thing I can think of is just fatigue of the name or Jacksonville overall. It's like when they give the MVP to someone else besides LeBron or Michael Jordan, just because all right, you can't give it to them 5 years in a row, even though they are the MVP.
Joel Embiid 1 year, sure. Here you go.
Yeah. Christian Kirk, if you look at his season, so he had that dud week 1 where they just didn't use him and everyone was freaking out. Yes, and then he had the game where he left early. Yeah, the game he got knocked out and left early where he had 1 catch.
People were big. You take
those. What's that?
I said people were big mad week 1.
Yeah.
Kids say. Real anger on that.
You look at weeks 2 through 12, and he was 14.5 points per game and wide receiver 19. So I fully expect him. Does he have top 12 potential? No, I don't think so. But he's going to be, he's going to be the number one target on this team, most likely, or right there with Evan Ingram. He's going to be a top 20 wide receiver. And I don't see, we're going to get into these other receivers. Like they don't really worry me too much, especially beginning of the year. They're not target hogs, So I'm fully in on Christian Kirk. I'll take people's fatigue on him, and it's not the sexy pick, but I'm getting a top 20 wide receiver on what I hope to be a pretty good offense.
Oh, I think it's extremely sexy if you're into value. If you're into free stuff and fleecing people, boy, this is about as good as it gets. This is the opposite of Anthony Richardson, where you like to YOLO. This is like I pull my khaki pants all the way up, and we take Christian Kirk, because this is exactly what I look for contributing wide receivers on my team. He's not a true alpha. I don't need him to be. He's the wide receiver one on his team. Is he a wide receiver one in the NFL? I don't even care. He's the wide receiver one on his team. He's going to get 1 billion targets. He's been in this system for years. He has a connection with his quarterback. He gets all the targets he could ever want. And it's like, I'm not worried about him drawing the one coverage, because we don't even necessarily know that that's going to happen, because I think the way the scheme is going to work is you've got Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., who we'll get into in a moment, for a reason, because you're not asking Christian Kirk to stretch the field. That's not his game anyway. Christian Kirk works the middle. Christian Kirk runs cut routes outside and inside. Like, that's what he does. Like, he uses his ability to plant and separate to get open. That's what he's always done. And he's got really good hands. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it is fatigue. Maybe that's all it is. But for me, I find it perplexing given what he was able to accomplish last year. And the only thing I can think of is another year older. Expectations for the team are lowered, and there's sexier new toys around it. But I'm looking at this, and it gives me the old warm and fuzzies that Jarvis Landry used to give me. When Jarvis Landry was in his prime, because it's not the same thing, but it's a similar idea where it's like, no, he's just going to get 1 million targets and he's going to be open, because he's not going to be taking shots down the field. They're going to give him things that he can use his size to get open and what he does. So I'm very intrigued by this, and really can't say enough good things about it. It's been a weirdly positive show so far. Like, we've got very little negative to say. So with Christian Kirk, it's like I'm fully wheels up on this. Y'all don't listen to anything I just said. He's terrible. He's terrible. You're right. He's awful. Like, I want him at like 80. Like, so that way it's just, the problem is that, like, the people we play with in a lot of leagues, I play with a lot of people. They already know this. So it's like Christian Kirk's not going into value leagues I play in, but it's weird to me that the public is on it.
Yeah, we didn't even mention 140 targets gone from Ridley. So
right, got to go somewhere.
Got to go somewhere, and I don't think it's going to go. Maybe it goes to the next two guys, but Kirk's going to get some of that for sure.
I think Kirk is like a steal for what you're getting right now. This is one of the players that I'm super endorsing. Like, this is kind of like this is exactly what I look for. Get a nice high-end wide receiver early. And then if he's my second or third wide receiver on my team, preferably third, I love my life. My life is great. You know what I mean? Like, what are my problems? Like, oh no, this diamond tiara is too tight. Like, Christian Kirk is my wide receiver 3. Oh no. Like, yeah, I don't really have too much in the way of problems, I don't think, if that's going to be the core of my team this year. So we've beat that horse to death. Let's talk about the shiny new toy. So I mentioned it in passing. Brian Thomas Jr. is the new rookie for this team, brought in to replace the aforementioned Calvin Ridley, who is now playing in Tennessee. So, which is crazy that he just went in division like that. But we'll talk about that here as we move along. What are your initial thoughts on Brian Thomas? Were you a fan of him in the pre-draft process?
Not like completely. I did not like him. Like, when I was comparing him to the guys like Xavier Worthy and stuff like that, I was definitely more on the Worthy side. And especially year one, we're talking about year one for Brian Thomas. I don't really know what his role is going to be, because it feels almost a little bit redundant to Gabe Davis. Now, they could just, use them differently in a way that I'm not, seeing right now, but, kind of that field stretcher, big play down the field, contested catch kind of guy. And so I'm not Was he going round 10 in
Well,
ADP in round
so
9?
I'll do it. I'll do it. I just want to get your. That's why I wanted.
Yeah.
So real quick, before we take a deep dive into the Brian Thomas thing, he opens as the wide receiver 48, which would translate to 115 overall by rank, and I think that's generous. I think that's a
Mhm.
generous expert ranking for this individual as a rookie. Um, I not how I have it in my rankings. Let's just say that. What it is scares me is that it's an average of a lot of people's rankings. And so, what are the other people's rankings that are making that happen? That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to. I can't. That's like looking at the sun. You can't dwell on that too much. You'll go blind. His ADP is 120, so the public's not that far off. And so, yes, to your point, if you're playing as a person against other people in a draft with, we'll call them normies, not me
Mhm.
and you. The that's terrifying because it is a straight up a 10th round pick. Like it's like, ooh, that's a bench
Yeah.
player I have to start because you're starting 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs at a minimum.
Mhm.
That's a player I'm playing. He's my second bench player.
Yeah. Now the path I do potentially see for him to kind of pay this back is like he has like a 10 touchdown season,
Yeah,
because
sure.
Christian Kirk is not this major touchdown guy. Evan Ingram has never been. Gabe Davis, we know what he is like.
Yeah.
So that's maybe the path for he's like an 850-yard, 10 touchdown, and he's like
A Cortland
top
Sutton
30
season?
receiver. Yeah,
He's gonna do a
yeah,
Sutton?
maybe right with
He's gonna do the
hopefully,
Sutton?
yeah,
His A dot is terrible, and he just catches touch. He's Michael Thomas. It's just
yeah,
old man Michael Thomas season. Like I could, all right, in that one very narrow range of outcomes, Mike. Okay, I could get behind this. The problem is, what's my fallback position? Because I don't think there is a fallback position. I think that you just outlined the best case scenario in a lot of ways for what I think
yeah.
this team's going to be.
Well, so we look at players going around him. Jameson Williams, Tyler Lockett, Cortland Sutton. The guy we just talked about. JSN. I mean, JSN's kind of up there, a couple rounds ahead of him. So like, it is kind of like that.
JSN's done more, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I get
yeah, for
why
sure.
that's happening. Like
No, but like the range of like Cortland Sutton doesn't excite me personally. Tyler Lockett doesn't
how
really
dare you?
excite
How
me.
dare?
We
How
already talked
dare
about it.
the
We
how
have to
dare the
disagree, all right?
disrespect? Well, the fact that you keep bringing it up shows me that we're not compromising very well. Don't worry.
No,
One day you'll name a player, and I'm going to be like, Mike, that's terrible. Like, don't
yeah.
worry, we'll get there.
But again, like you look at those names and it's like, all right, I guess I can see why Brian Thomas is going here, even though like there's other guys down the list where I'd
That's
much
my
rather
issue.
have. But
That's my issue. I
yeah.
go down the list. It's not so much the up the list; it's the
Mhm.
down the list that I'm like, I'd rather do that. I'd rather do that. I'd rather take Josh
Yeah.
Downs.
Yep.
Like
Palmer.
I'd rather do that, and I can get Josh Downs 2 rounds later.
Yeah.
Like I'm not super interested in this. If this was 2 rounds later to buy the ticket for the movie I've never seen before, cool. I'd have no
Yeah.
problem with it. But here, no, this is too rich for me. This is like the one thing on Jacksonville that I'm like, hey, we found it. The thing that I'm like, nah, it's too rich for my blood, man. I'm gonna let that go.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna let somebody else take the risk on that. Maybe it's a boat. It could be, you know what I mean? It could be anything. But like
Mhm.
I'd rather at that point when I'm drafting bench players, it's too early for me to start taking flyers.
Yeah.
I want to start. I want things that I know what I'm getting at that point because those are things that I'm going to have to play in buys and whatever. Like I'm going to need
Mhm.
that stuff. So I don't like getting things like that. If I want flyers, I could do that. I'd rather have Rashid Shaheed,
Mhm.
because I know what that is. Like I can get that later too. Like it's for the extreme other example of Josh Downs, the total antithesis of Josh Downs, Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, and and I was just looking at the running backs as well going in there. Like, a lot of them are backup, maybe handcuffs, but they're like, oh, if they take over, they're winning you leagues.
Who are they?
Benson, Trey Benson, Blake Corum.
Oh, okay.
Those two in particular. Chase Brown, who we'll see what
We'll
happens.
see. Maybe.
But a couple guys like that, where it's like even guys like I mean, Gus Edwards and Jerome Ford, like guys
Yeah,
that you can start.
Jerome Ford becomes more attractive every day. Let me tell you, that's going to be one of the things
Yeah.
on the update show at the end of the month. Is Jerome Ford just the stock just keeps getting higher, and it's just like what, like it's insane.
Yeah.
We did that show about a month ago at this point, and I'm like, well, that's in the trash. Like, all right, so neither one of us is going to recommend Brian Thomas. Would you recommend Gabe Davis? And before I do, I get an answer to that. Gabe Davis opens as the wide receiver 61, translates to 150 overall. ADP is 155, so the public is similarly minded. Let's keep in mind that that's like a 14th round pick. 13, 14, something like that. So what do you think about Gabe Davis at a 2-round discount of what we were of Brian Thomas?
Yeah, I mean,
3-round discount, excuse me.
Yeah, comparing him to Brian Thomas, I'll take Gabe Davis.
How about Gabe Davis in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not excited about it, but
okay.
there's some value in the sense of like when those heavy bye weeks come, it's like, man, I need someone. Maybe you need someone safe, but sometimes you need someone that can potentially give you 25 points out of nowhere.
I'm gonna lose anyway, so we're just gonna roll the bones, baby. Like, it doesn't matter. My whole team's on bye. Like,
yeah. But I mean, we just saw Gabe Davis come from playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as the number 2 option on that team for the last 2 years. And he's
really, really high highs and some really, really low lows.
It's a 50 catch, 800 yard, 6-7 touchdown guy, and you'll never know when it's going to come. So
in
best
ball, Gabe Davis is great.
He's awesome. Yeah.
In not best ball, I have concerns and have for a long time. But this is where it's actually finally priced at a level that I'm interested. Mm-hmm. Because if he's my last skill position player and you're getting to that point by that point in the draft, cool. Sure. Because if I've invested virtually nothing, if it pans out and it goes the right way, hey, cool. If it flames out, I'll just cut him. And it's fine. Like it's one of those situations where it's like the investment is so minimal. Yeah. Because there is a tremendous amount of upside still. Because we've seen what he can do when he's healthy and motivated, and he's playing at his apex. Like, he's good. But there is a significant ebb and flow on this of like, that's not really the right way to explain. Let me try that idea again. There's a certain amount of just horrible inconsistency that we've always seen, where it's just like he can't be the same guy 2 weeks in a row. It's very, very, very frustrating. Last wide receiver I think is worth talking about is Parker Washington, who before he got hurt last year was on his way to potentially having a little job on this team. And he's kind of a smaller guy, you know what I mean? But they use him in different ways. And he's having a really good camp. He's healthy. He's recovered from what knocked him out last season. And he's just somebody that it's worth knowing about. Because if something was to happen to one of these other guys, I think Parker Washington is starting. And we'll see where it goes from there. It's not the easiest road to fantasy relevance for Parker Washington, but I would know what it is. It's why he doesn't have an ADP. It's just one of those things that it's just a guy that we've seen flat a little bit. It was starting to happen. And then he got hurt, and then he missed the rest of the year. And it's just something that I see that name, and I'm like, yeah, if all the stars aligned, I could see a universe where we're writing a column where you're talking about it on Monday with Jason about go ahead, Parker Washington. He got all these targets because Gabe Davis got hurt. Brad Thomas is terrible. And it's like, I could see that exact scenario in my mind where it's like, yeah, the problem with Parker Washington is that he's not very big, as I mentioned. He's a very small fellow, but he's got good moves with the ball in his hand. I was very impressed to see what he was able to do.
Yeah, definitely a name potentially we'll be talking about on a Monday. So,
and then the last thing, we talked about it a couple times. Evan Ingram is still the tight end here. Evan Ingram is like the ship that you can't sink. He's God, it feels like he's been in the league for a billion years, and it's the same. Maybe I've just been doing this for too long because it's the same conversation every year. Evan Ingram's pretty good if he could actually catch the ball. It's like, but yeah, he opens as the tight end 8. which would be 86 by rank. But this is the one area where the public is interested in Jacksonville because they're taking him at 71 overall. And this is where I'm just like, why would you take a tight end this early? And why would it be Evan Ingram? And I just, why, Mike? Do you know why? Help me understand.
No, well, I guess I do know why, in the sense of like he had a crazy season, almost broke the tight end reception, 114 receptions last year, but he's only 963 yards. He's not going to catch touchdowns. It's just fine. You want to take him? I'm not going to do it. Like I'm not excited about it. Even saying that, the guy caught 115 passes and he was still only tight end 4. You should be tight end 1 if you count 115 passes. Like, so no, like that is the absolute peak. You know, his targets were down by 2.5 when Christian Kirk was on the field. Now, we talked about Ridley's no longer here, so we do have to bring that up. But I expect him to be the number 2 target on this team.
Same.
And, you know, he's going to do similar in terms of yards of what he did last year. But I don't expect him to catch 115 passes. And, you know, we've never seen him catch more than, 6 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those plays where you're going to look back and like, oh, I lost because I took Evan Ingram in round 6 and not, you know, insert wide receiver running back that was a complete stud. So
that is the problem, is the targets will be there for you if you want them, but you're paying a lot for a tight end that doesn't even give you that much of an advantage at the tight end position. If you were going to pay up for tight end, why not just pay up for real and get one of the actual ones that I would argue don't matter still, but should do more? Like, it's, I don't like this. I'd rather wait. It's just not something that I'm going to co-sign. The things on this team that I really think are Etienne is an appropriate thing. It's where he's rated where he should be. Lawrence and Kirk are incredible values. Gabe Davis, there's a little bit of meat on that bone for you too if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brian Thomas, no, and Evan Ingram, just hard pass. And that's kind of it. Like that's it. But I will say, as I will close with how I started, there's a lot of value here, and I think people are overreacting to Jacksonville underperforming last year in just a general way. I don't think they're as bad as people are ascribing them to be. So it's interesting for fantasy.
We've gone from you know, overreacting and thinking they're going to be the best team in the NFL offensively, and then to one of the worst teams. Like we need to get, they're somewhere in the middle, and now we're getting the value.
It's just this, and it's just like okay, like it's not. I don't think it's totally real. I think it's much more, it's closer to a straight line than this.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get it figured out this year though. But yeah, a lot of value to be had here. The only other thing to say, I'm trying to figure out. I forget. I don't have the schedule immediately in front of me. This is a failing on my end. I'm trying to figure out who we are.
Chiefs.
Yes, right? Thank you. Yes. So that is it for Jacksonville, and tune in tomorrow where we're going to go through the Kansas City Chiefs and have our annual discussion about how projection inflation works and how you should be on the lookout for it as it relates to fantasy football. And tune in for that conversation, as well as a breakdown of the Kansas City Chiefs. But until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!